Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we contemplate the power of pilgrimage. And we will focus in particular today on an upcoming pilgrimage to Ireland. I've just been on two pilgrimages here in France, where I continue to be in Chartres, and we have our Chartres Academy. And for the last 18 years, a central part of our annual calendar has been to make pilgrimage to Chartres. And this year, after the Chartres pilgrimage, a smaller group of us made pilgrimage down to the Paleolithic caves in the Dordogne in southern France. Now, people have been making pilgrimages since time immemorial. Even in the Paleolithic days, people would make pilgrimage. Some of the caves that we visited, dating back 20, 30, 40,000 years, were destination points for pilgrimage. It was clear that nobody lived there, but people went there on certain occasions, maybe at the equinox or the solstice or the full moon. People in Asia and Africa, Mesoamerica, everywhere there's been people, there have been pilgrimage. It's one of the most consistent practices that humans, wherever we have been, have done. It's an extraordinary thing. And the nature of a pilgrimage is to essentially seek out a sacred site and travel there and open oneself up, both in the journey to the site, but in the site itself, to the transformational power of the telluric energies that radiate literally from the Mother Earth in a particular frequency. So, for example, in Chartres, the frequency is that of the sacred feminine. And when the Druids came out of Eastern Europe into France 3,500, 4,000 years ago, they noted a particular frequency of a virgin giving perpetual birth. And that frequency has endured to the present time. And Chartres, for example, is one of those few places in all of Western Europe where, when the Christians came, they didn't desecrate everything and tear everything down as if it was idolatry, but rather they affirmed it, built upon the energetic, and therefore there's been a continuity. You know, one thinks of going to India to the Taj Mahal, which was built in the adoration of romantic love for the wife of the emperor, Jahan Shah, who died prematurely. And as an expression of his love for her, he built the Taj Mahal. And he spent so much money on the Taj Mahal that his son replaced him because he had emptied the budget. But he was just so overwhelmed with the impulse to build a monument, an eternal monument to love. And people ever since have made pilgrimage to the Taj Mahal to just be in the presence of sacred love. And all over the world, people make pilgrimage, but it's really a journey of transformation. It's a journey to immerse oneself in a particular place that symbolically references a certain tonality of being, a certain frequency of the spirit, so that by being in that place, one experiences what Plato called the enlargement of the soul, because Plato And all of the ancient masters taught that if you're in a particular site associated with beauty, or a particular site emanating a certain frequency, one is elevated and one becomes more harmonized. And then one journeys back to one's home in a different, more rarefied and refined state of consciousness. So today we're going to hear about an upcoming pilgrimage from Mary Frances Drake, accompanied by her sister, Audrey Drake. Mary Frances Drake has been on Humanity Rising a number of times before. She's a senior adjunct faculty in psychology at the University of Massachusetts in Lowell, where she's taught for over 3 decades. She's also a priest and bishop in the Christian mystical tradition. She's written a number of books. She has completely dedicated her life to the elevation of human consciousness and a more abundant human evolution, with a particular focus on women and in particular mature women. And this pilgrimage that we're going to be hearing about today is going to be for women in their midlife. So I want to, as we begin our program, I want to welcome Audrey Drake, who's a very accomplished musician, plays a range of instruments, and she's going to provide our opening meditative moment as we come into the program. And then Mary Frances will show us a PowerPoint about the pilgrimage that is in store. So thank you, everyone. Welcome to Humanity Rising. And Audrey Drake, I welcome you to play some of your music.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. So we'll start with settling yourself and connecting to your breath and enjoying the sounds, the vibration of water in this beautiful chime. So breathing in deeply, exhaling slowly as we journey together for these few moments through a journey of sound and peace. Breathing in and out through your heart. And settling in with the vibration of our earth, the support of our mother. Sadguru Name, Siri Guru Devi Name, Adguru Name, Jagat Guru Name, Sadguru Name, Siri Guru Devi Name. I am peace, I am light, I am beloved, I am free. You are peace, oh, you are light, you are beloved, you are free. Peace to all of you. And thank you for having me share that with you.
Thank you so much, Audrey. I appreciate your starting us off with the right tone for this journey that we'll be doing today about the pilgrimage. And thank you, Jim, for having us here today and for introducing the pilgrimage and the beauty that comes from the pilgrimage to Chartres each year through Ubiquity. I'd like us to take a moment right now to feel into what's happening in your heart as you contemplate pilgrimage journey and the feeling of the music that you've just heard. The pilgrimage is a conscious and sacred journey, and that journey has many goals and many surprises. And so I want to talk for a while about the goals and surprises, and then I have a short slideshow to show you about some of the things about the particular pilgrimage that Audrey and I will be leading in Ireland this fall. So generally speaking, there is a call to pilgrimage. There's a call to the soul to pilgrimage that is drawing us towards something. Maybe it's drawing us to a particular place like Chartres. Maybe it's drawing us to a particular experience, for example, releasing or healing from grief or loss, gathering up the wisdom of our life, coming to know ourselves more deeply as peace and love and beauty, as Audrey was singing about. And also coming to a place of connection and communion with our inner self, our inner spirit as our guide and our friend, let's say, that helps answer the questions that we have on our heart and our soul. As Jim mentioned, much of my professional work has been done in working with women, and now as an almost 60-year-old woman, with women of menopausal and postmenopausal age, where in our culture, in the Western culture, women of this age have been discarded and devalued in such ways that it has been detrimental to our culture at large, because the qualities of the strength and the softness of a woman who is aging and eldering and gathering up her wisdom is lost when the culture doesn't make a container for it. So as Jim mentioned about Chartres with the divine feminine, Women at this age are meant to be letting the divine feminine rise in their own being, gathering up the gold and wisdom of their own life and offering it to the world. And in a culture that doesn't really support that, but generally ends the value of womankind at when you can no longer have children at menopause, this whole second part of life, or third part of life, if you think of the maiden mother crone experience, this third part of life is really about gathering those gems and that wisdom and realigning with the sovereign nature of the wise woman, and then bringing that to the world for future generations. And as a psychology teacher of women for 30 some years, what I find with young women is that they're really starving for connection with a wise woman in their lives. And so it has been my joy and my journey to help women come into that wisdom themselves. And that's the reason why I'm doing this particular pilgrimage in Ireland this fall. So let me open my slideshow so I can share a few images with you. So this is the image that I'm using for this wise woman emerging pilgrimage to Ireland. And you can see this white-haired woman creating something connected to the earth and also connected to the cosmos. The rest of this image has the sky above her. And included in this pilgrimage will be a croning ceremony. So a croning ceremony is a rite of passage that was part of many cultures, indigenous cultures. When a woman went through menopause, there would be a time of transformation and then a time of croning, which means acceptance and honoring of that woman's wisdom in her community. So this will be part of the pilgrimage that we're doing in Ireland. But let's just take a look at some of the other aspects of pilgrimage that are useful to contemplate when we're thinking about this conscious and sacred journey where women or people are seeking some kind of release or answers or inner guidance. So this particular pilgrimage will be offered at Ubiquity University for credit. And it is an immersive program, a week-long immersive program that that women can be involved in. And I'm sorry to say that men are not invited to this particular pilgrimage because it is a croning ceremony and a pilgrimage for women alone. And however much we adore our male counterparts, there is something that happens when women and men are together because of the way our culture has been, and women are somewhat deferential to men. And so we're giving a container that allows for women to be center stage. And if a woman in midlife is having a call from her soul because of grief, because of growth, because of reimagining herself in this part of life, or because of the yearning for a rite of passage that says, this part of my life is over and this is just beginning, or I'm on my way to this, having that demarcation in our lives is a psychological boon to us and a spiritual boon to us. And so women of a certain age want to purposefully go about the journey that will allow them to release grief, embrace growth and change, and step into the new passage or the new part of their lives that postmenopausal life offers to us. So in preparing for pilgrimage, it's recommended that people set intentions, like what is it that you're looking for? Now, not to say that a pilgrimage will necessarily stay in the guidelines of what you're looking for, because that's part of the beauty and the mystery of a pilgrimage, is that you set out with one intention in mind and many other things arise synchronistically to support your growth. But the preparation is to set time apart in your life and immerse yourself consciously in this growth process in a container that allows for that growth to happen. So I've used a couple of books to prepare this presentation, and also these books will be used in the course and in the pilgrimage itself. One of them is The Art of Pilgrimage by Phil Cousineau, and it's a beautiful, beautiful expression of what pilgrimage is about. The other is my book called Dancing in the Doorway, which is about my pilgrimage through life. And then the third is Sharon Blackie's Haggitude, which is about the movement into the third aspect of the female life cycle, which is post-menopausal. So somewhere between 50 and 70, all of these changes are happening, and women are reimagining, recreating themselves in light of the wisdom that they've gained. And setting this time apart gives that part of their lives value and power as they turn the formidable presence that comes over us as we move into midlife and beyond towards the remaking of our own self as wise women. And that takes some time and intention and being set apart. And this is one of the powerful things about pilgrimage. We turn our attention away from the distractions, away from the daily grind, and we say, this is an important thing that's happening in my life. And I want to demarcate it with intention, with consciousness, with openness. And having a container to do that in, like a pilgrimage where you go on this journey away from home and you're with other women, and or maybe alone. Sometimes people do solo pilgrimages. But the container is creating a daily round where you're setting your consciousness and your state of mind up to be present to the synchronicities and subtleties that will arise. And so Audrey will be coming to set our days up in our pilgrimage in Ireland with music, with sound healing, with songs like the beautiful song we heard this morning to help encourage the spirit of the woman to rise up and gather its strength, gather its softness together, and remake itself in the image of the wise woman that is emerging in their life. The other part of this container for our pilgrimage in Ireland is my experience as someone who has done many times, has led many retreats of this nature, and also the beauty of the place that we'll be in. So Ireland holds a dear place in my heart. I've visited County Sligo many times, and this image behind me is actually an image of Lough Gill, which is a lake in Sligo that is famed for being a place that William Butler Yeats visited many times. And as a fellow poet, I was drawn there and have spent many solitary times in sabbatical and seclusion in that area. So I've become familiar with many of the sacred places in that part of Ireland to bring people to. And these discoveries of place and time, as Jim was saying, the energy of a place, the time of year that we're going happens to be during the fall equinox, which is in the cycle of a life, exactly the time of life that women are moving into midlife and post-menopause and into this wisdom part of life before eldering. And then there's the self that we bring to it. So the exchange between our being and the place, our being and this time of year, our being and a group of women supporting one another, our being and a container for conscious growth, which means we step into this liminal space. We create this numinous space, the threshold between our everyday life and our inner life, and the energy of a beautiful and rich, historical, mythical, magical place like Ireland. And all of those things come together to make a beautiful experience that fosters growth for those who are attending. This is true, of course, in any place that one might be called to journey or to pilgrimage, like Chartres or many other places on the planet that we can go to have this experience purposely. Sometimes we have accidental pilgrimages, but this kind of pilgrimage where it's purposeful and immersive tends to clear layer after layer after layer of history, of healing, of grief, of wonder, of fears about the future, especially in our culture that is just now beginning to embrace the wisdom of wise women, of eldering women. And so it provides that beautiful container that is purposeful. Some of the challenges of a pilgrimage is that you are shedding these things, and so therefore coming into a place where you don't know yourself as well as you used to, because the old is dying and falling away, and the new is not quite here, or it's just emerging. Maybe we're feeling we're in some kind of a waiting room, waiting for the next thing to arise in us, and that creates a sense of vulnerability. And so this container in this beautiful place, in this rich, energetic place, the container of the things that we've curated for this pilgrimage allows for that vulnerability to be happening in a safe place. So that tender new skin that arises as we slough off the old is allowed to grow in safety and security, in beauty, in the sorority of women going through this together. And holding that tension between being and becoming, between who you know yourself to be and who you're coming to be. That is one of the things that pilgrimage allows for. And then there's the marking of the progress of the pilgrimage through things like ritual and journaling and creative expression that really helps to ground the experience, to express it in a way that informs you and others in the group about the potential for coming through this experience and coming through this time of life. And then, of course, at the end of these days is the closure, what you will take back with you, how you've changed, and importantly, how you will reintegrate into the world that you came from, which now you're visiting as a bit of a stranger, because now you're made new. Of course, there are things that stay the same in you, but you're made new in a way that now you'll have to go back to the old energy of your place and time and people and bring the newness with you. And that newness, I think, is the important part of this whole process for women, is to say, I can, allow this part of me to come out and know that it is sovereign. I am the one who gets to decide who I am and how I'll be in the world. And now that many of the responsibilities of parenting are done, and the responsibilities of childbearing are done, now I can say, who am I and what am I here for beyond those beautiful experiences? But now as a wise woman, as someone who's coming into her own in midlife and beyond. So these are all of the intentions that we set up in order for a pilgrimage to be most useful to us. And Phil Cosino does a beautiful job in The Art of Pilgrimage and explaining that whole process, which is why I've chosen that book to be part of this course and part of this pilgrimage. So now that we've set the stage, we can look at the tools of the soul that will be accessed during a pilgrimage. The pilgrimage I'll be talking about in particular. Looks like I hear some waves. Is that me? Oh, I guess I did. I guess I put something on there that I didn't mean to put on there. Let's see if it goes away. Okay. So these three things, accessing the unconscious layers of the psyche and soul through sacred practices. So Audrey will be providing meditation and sound practices. And every day that will start the daily round of tuning in, as we did at the beginning of this session, and activating our being, aligning our being to that numinous and liminal space and holding that space open. And all of the things that we do during the day in mindfulness, where we're cultivating this state of being exquisitely obedient to the moment that we're in, gathering up the fruits of the moment, the synchronicities, that as we're aligned to this process, we can then gain insights from the stillness and devotion and openness and attentiveness. And each time we do that, those things get integrated into our being each day. So this process continues day to day. It continues with dream work as well. And the creative practices that support this emerging wisdom will be in any pilgrimage will be journaling or writing poetry or taking photos or doing artwork or paying attention to your dreams, attuning to the places that you're at and learning from the energy of a place, of the time of year that is quite purposefully chosen for this particular pilgrimage. So all of these ways that we can gather, we can tune in, stay mindful, gather information about the process that's happening, and openness to letting it flow over the course of the time that the pilgrimage is happening. And these are some of the post-menopausal archetypes that Sharon Blackie talks about in her book Haggitude. And the power of myth, especially in a place like Ireland, there's so much richness in the myth of that country, and in particular, this area that I'll be bringing women to. But these are some of the ways that women can espouse this croning process. They might be people who feel drawn towards a creative nature, like old women weaving the world. So they might be creative in their actual artwork or creative in their communities, some way of networking and forming a web. There are a lot of fabric works and yarn works that women do, and those things are indicative of that feminine model of connecting things together. Sometimes women are forces of nature. In the Irish tradition, that would be like the Cailleach, which is a woman who is fiercely strong and a protector of the land and protector of what's true and good and beautiful. Or of Queen Maeve in the mythology of Ireland, who was a warrior queen, and she competed against the men of her time. And so we'll include the story and the energy of Queen Maeve in our pilgrimage. Then some women take on the archetype of being mentors, like fairy godmothers, or Mother Hulda, women who take on the young and help them, bless them with encouragement and guidance. Sometimes women are tricksters and truth tellers, and they hold the culture to account for what's happening out there, and they just say it like it is. And then there's wise women with deep vision, prophetic, and discernment about what's happening in the world. There are old dangerous women like Baba Yaga, carriers of the fire, who challenge us, and the old bone mother who represents death. So there are others like grandmothers, goddesses, saints, all of these potential expressions of the archetypal feminine in midlife and beyond that we can try on and see which one or ones fit us as we're moving through this time of life. So during this pilgrimage, the women will have an opportunity to try these on, see which of the many aspects of the feminine, the divine feminine, rising into the wise woman and the crone, take on for them in their own process and their own pilgrimage. And some of the attributes of the wise woman that we can look for in ourselves as women, or look to in the future as we go through a pilgrimage or this process of wisening and croning, is that wise women are in tune with their own life experience and the lessons that they've learned. So they've gathered up the gold of their experience and they hold it close, the treasure of their life, much of it born from pain, much of it born from experience that was a challenge. And then gathering that up instead of thinking of these things were hard things in my life, but they were purposeful challenges. And I can gather them together and use them as the force for what I've come to offer. Wise women also have a deep sense of self-trust. They're intuitive and instinctual, so a deep sense of knowing themselves. And they don't suffer fools very well, wise women. They generally are unapologetic about speaking the truth. And that's a power of the wise women that, of course, the patriarchal society doesn't want. And that's one of the reasons why that age was dismissed, because the toxic masculine doesn't want to be held to account and isn't very good at taking responsibility or apologizing or fixing. So basically, the wise women of the Western culture have been gagged and dismissed, devalued, and sent away to live somewhere where they won't bother anyone. And then, of course, there's the full range of feeling, from exquisite tenderness to righteous wrath. So women in the Western culture in particular have been squeezed into, you have to be nice, beautiful, kind, sweet. Those are the parameters for the feminine expression. And women in our time of midlife age are starting to bust out of that and say, I am a feeling being. That's what this instrument does. It feels deeply. And all of those feelings are facts in my being, facts in my life. And so really reclaiming that territory. Another reason for a pilgrimage, to reclaim the territory of one's own truth. That creates a solid sense of your personal self and your higher self in this process of being and becoming, that all of life helps us to navigate, but a pilgrimage in particular holds the container for the swift movement, the deep movement of that being and becoming. And wise women tend to have no regrets because everything they've experienced, we can find the wisdom in it. We've cleaned up the things we need to, we've taken account for ourselves, and we've gathered the wisdom to then pass on. No one's life is without mistakes and scars and blemishes, but we can make good from all of the things that we've experienced. And wise women have an awareness for the need for reparation, reconciliation, and reconnection, which is what Humanity Rising, I think, stands for, is recognizing the need for that, and which is what eldering stands for. We have to clean things up. We have to become friends again with one another and go across the great divide of peoples and reconnect in a way that is deeply human, deeply heart-centered, in order to clean up the bigger mess and gain the wisdom from our experience and create the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible, as Charles Eisenstein says. And then there's the clarity about what's yours to do and what's not yours to do. And that's useful too, because many women have been pushed toward doing things because it's nice and good, and that's not always the best thing or the right thing for any particular woman. So all of this has to do with gathering inner wisdom. So I want to show you the website, the pages on the website, just a brief glimpse into what we'll be doing in Ireland. Let me find it there. Here we go. So again, pilgrimage and croning ceremony. And this will be happening in Sligo, Ireland this fall from September 16th to the 23rd. And we have a maximum of 14 participants. And here is information about the event, about looking to women of a certain age to give you an opportunity to go through this pilgrimage process and gather the gold of experience, claiming the wisdom of your years. And this is a guided, contained experience, which gives women the possibility of relaxing into the process that we've put in place in order for that transformative experience to happen. And we'll be going to sacred sites and staying at a beautiful place by the sea called the Sea Barn. And I'll make sure that the website gets in here, but my website's called madevi.org. And I want to show you a little bit from the itinerary so that you can see the experiences that will happen. I'm going to go through these first ones. Here's information about Audrey and myself. So here's how we'll start this pilgrimage. And I'm not going to tell you every single day, but just a few things to give you the sense of this container. So we'll be collected by a private driver in Dublin, and then we'll go straight away to visit the Black Madonna of Ireland. So if you've been to Chartres or other sites that have a Black Madonna, you know that this is a very sacred place for the feminine. And it's a place where we can seek the blessing and support of the divine feminine, of the Mother Earth, of this beautiful place that we're going to be traveling in. And this experience of beginning, starting with the help, starting with the connection of the women and the help of the mother to go through this process together. So the Black Madonna is both the loving and the challenging mother, right? Both of those things. The kind and firm mother that says, you are beloved and you have some things to do. And so the support that moves us and encourages us both at the same time. And although this is an icon in a Catholic church, in a Carmelite monastery, the Black Madonna is an icon that has crossed all religious and spiritual barriers. When people are in front of a Black Madonna, the sense of the motherly love and wisdom comes through. It helps us to not only have humility before such a great wisdom, but also have the encouragement of that great wisdom to come into our own wisdom. And like any good mother, this Black Madonna, wants her children to come into their own and do what they came to do, to find what that is, to find what their destiny is. And so once we visit the Black Madonna, we'll be going straight away to the Hill of Tara. And this stone here that you see in this image is the Stone of Destiny. It's a powerful Celtic and Druid sacred place. And the energy of this place is the energy of the place of Ireland, the heart and soul of Ireland, the history of Ireland before Christianity, before Catholicism came. It was the people close to the land, close to the myth, close to living in that liminal space where the earth itself informed and transformed. There's also at this beautiful site a holy well and a beautiful art gallery with a Celtic artist named Courtney Davis. And so we'll be having a lot of cultural, spiritual, and historical experiences, but most of all, the personal experience of tuning into these places and seeing what happens as we tune in together, each person individually, but then the group together as we're going along this journey. So here's the setup for the pilgrimage. And then we'll go to Sligo to the Sea Barn by the sea, and we'll have some time there to gather ourselves before we go on to see, to investigate and embed ourselves in the myth of Queen Maeve. And this will be the second day of our pilgrimage.
So
Oops.
sorry to interrupt you. Some people asked me to let you know that they can't see what you're looking at.
Oh my goodness.
So sorry, everyone.
Okay.
We'll see the last slide.
Sorry about that. Maybe I can do something else here. I'm going to stop the share for a moment. I apologize for that. I couldn't see that chat. Let me see if I can do it a different way. All right. Can you see that now?
Yes. I can. I was able to see you all along, Mary Frances. So I don't know. Audrey, could you see her?
No, I think several people could just see the last slide from before this.
Oh, okay. Sorry, everyone. I was able to see, so I was just trundling along here.
So, Audrey, are you able to see this one now that says the second day of the pilgrimage?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I can see that and the ones on the left.
And the ones on the left. Okay. All right. Apologies for that. And I'm not going to go through every page here because we don't have the time to do that, but I just wanted to give you the sense for that each day is a curated experience, not so people will have a particular experience, but so that when they go through the experience of that day, they will have something arise and then that's associated with this place and these myths and this time. And the Irish culture has a very strong feminine culture between the queens and the mothers, and some of that will be experienced in the nature that we'll see when we go to places like Lochgill and the Hazelwood and meet some of the people in Sligo town. And this man in the corner here is a storyteller in Sligo town. So there's a whole week of experiences that are curated to bring people through this experience and to have it be something that is profound and beautiful for them and supported. And then I want to show you one last slide in my PowerPoint, which is this quote by Thich Nhat Hanh that says, "Our own life has to be our message." And this comes from a place called Fearless Soul. And I love this quote because the whole point of a pilgrimage is to get you in tune with your own life and what your own message is. What's the wisdom of your experience that you have to offer the world? And the wise women that gather together for this pilgrimage will certainly be expressing that. And then I just put together this collage in my last class called Wise Women Emerging, which is some of the things in my own life that have been the thing that has expressed my life and therefore my story and therefore my message. So that's another way, is doing some kinds of collage that shows the things that are important to us at this point in life. So I'll stop the share there. And I just want to round it out by saying that we'll be very excited to see who comes to this pilgrimage. It's very different from taking a retreat, or very different from taking a vacation or a leisurely journey through a country. Not to say those things can't also have the aspects of this journey that I'm speaking of, but also to say that when it's done purposefully and consciously, then we're in a place where it is a process that can continue over the course of days and have a cumulative impact that's really deeply felt and deeply transformative. And so that's why we're doing the week immersion in Ireland in County Sligo. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I know there are other people who are associated with Ubiquity and Chartres who are also doing pilgrimages. Colette Cochran is doing one in France this fall. She does them periodically. A friend who I met in Chartres last year, Sana, is going to the Women's International Networking Conference, which is another way women are gathering to promote and collaborate on bringing their mission and their wisdom to the world. So these are things are happening in lots of places. And so as people maybe listen to this information about the power of the pilgrimage, maybe they will be drawn toward Ireland, and maybe they'll be drawn towards something else that moves their soul, that is maybe part of their ancestry. I happen to have some Irish ancestry, and so Ireland is very dear to me. And I imagine to a lot of other people. And it is a magical place. It is a magical and mystical place with many beautiful sacred spaces that I look forward to sharing with those participants. I think that's all I want to say about that. Jim, I'll hand it back to you for the last bit, and to see maybe if Audrey has any other comments that she wants to add.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Mary Frances. I envy your trip. I know that my kind can't go on this particular one, but it's wonderful that you're taking the kind of women that you are, and I'm sure it's going to be very deep and rich, especially with Audrey. And so, Audrey, is there anything you want to add to what Mary Frances just indicated?
Well, just that I'm so honored to be a part of this and really looking forward to it. And the I do feel like having such a small group is going to be just so intimate and lovely for everyone, and in terms of sound and how that or part of my role in that is to, help women find their voice, their sound. And so in the mornings when we do meditations, we'll also be doing some singing. And it's such a lovely thing when someone can find, freedom of vibration and peace in their voice. So I'm looking forward to all that will unfold.
Now, Mary Frances, tell us more about the particular site. You mentioned that the kind of the telluric energy is pre-Christian, so very Celtic, Druidic, and it really represents the land. But tell us more about why, of all the places in Ireland, you go to this particular place.
Well, the Hill of Tara was one of the first places I experienced, because before I went on my own pilgrimage there the first time, I just investigated what's in the area. And Tara is an ancient site. And I was looking at that time, some years ago, for what's the next thing. My youngest had just graduated from high school. And so I was in that process of like, what now? Not that I hadn't done a lot of wonderful things, but as another kind of stage of life. So the Hill of Tara in particular, and if people have read my book, Dancing in the Doorway, I had a profound spiritual experience there of the Stone of Destiny. And so I sat next to it with my back up against it and meditated and fell into the stone in a Outlander type of way before I knew Outlander existed, and had an experience of the land and the history there in a way that was very profound to me. And so in doing that, I knew, okay, I'm here for a reason. Now I have to find out what the reason is. And then going to Sligo, getting to know the countryside, getting to know, and being a poet and associated with Yeats and his esoteric background. And, what I think is fabulous about the pilgrimage of life and the pilgrimage, the purposeful pilgrimage, is that we get not just synchronicities, but signs and wonders that come together to show us the next thing we need to see about ourselves, and the next, and the next, and the next. And then how do we formulate that together into an offering that we can then give back to the next generation, which is the point. The role of the wise woman is to say, I've gathered up my wisdom, and here it is for the next generation, whoever might need it or want to avail themselves of it. And so that in conjunction with my work as a Christian mystic and my devotion to Mother Mary across many, many years, so going to the Black Madonna, and the end of our pilgrimage will be at the Marian apparition site at Knock, Ireland, which is a World Heritage Site where Mother Mary appeared to the people in that part of Ireland, a very poor community during the famine times, and brought them hope, and they built a site there that is a Marian apparition site that's quite beautiful and profound. So that's how we'll end, is going back to the beginning. And in the middle there, we have the fall equinox, which will be celebrated by a croning ceremony in this beautiful place called the Fairy Glen, which is a very Irish place to visit. You know, it's between two pillars of stone, and it's, you know, green and water everywhere. And so a beautiful place to do a croning ceremony where people will be able to create their own croning crowns and walk into their crone experience. And then we'll go to Knock and have that blessed by the Blessed Mother. So it's I find for myself the combination of the best of both worlds, the best of the Celtic world, the best of
Yeah, yeah.
the mystical world, and the best of Ireland. You know, Ireland is magical in many ways, in many places, and that's why so many people visit there.
Well, it surely is one of the most magical places, I think, in all the world. There's something just about the land and the water and the people that
Yes.
make it mystical and magical, almost no matter where you are.
Yes, yes, in many parts of Ireland, and I've been drawn to this County Sligo, which is interesting. And part of me doesn't really want to go to other parts of Ireland because I'm afraid that it will be in competition with my love for Sligo. But the beauty and the history, what I feel about the people that have been through so much hardship is that they're gentle spirited people, and that is something that allows for you to just be yourself. You know, our culture is so fast and pressured and has expectations, and you have to fill people's,
Totally.
ideas of who you are, So there's a freedom of spirit there and a gentleness. Um, the people there just are like, oh, no bother. And, like they just allow, there's a lot of allowance to be who you are, where you are. There's a lot of curiosity and, interest in other people. And also, I have a friend there who's a driver, and he talked about the fairy glens in his area when he grew up, and he's about my age, and so he's like, well, of course I don't believe in that, but you never go over a fairy mound, you never flatten a fairy mound, you just wouldn't do that, and so the culture is still alive with the magic, which
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
is a beautiful thing that's missing in a lot of places that have become
for sure.
civilized, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, here's a question for you from Maura Cunyon. She's curious how you integrate this important ritual wisdom back into the patriarchy. Is that part of the exploration?
Yes, for sure. And I saw that someone else wrote that many people have conscious men in their lives who aren't toxic, and I'm glad for you. I'm really, really glad for you. But having been a counselor and a minister for most of my adult life, I find that in general, women have a really hard time claiming and owning their power because of toxic masculinity that is systemic in our culture. And so I'm not dissing men. I love men, and I've had partnerships, some of them more conscious than others, over time, of course. Um, but in order for us to tip the scales of our culture into a more balanced masculine feminine, the feminine has to rise up and take its place. And sometimes the powers that be in any time, they don't give up that power so easily. So sometimes we have to claim it, embody it, and then go back and say, listen, this is what's real and this is what's true. And I hear so many women doing that now, so many women of midlife and beyond age, wise women coming forward and saying, we have to do this differently, guys. We gotta change this, and we don't need to blame while we're changing. We just need to have space to make the changes and balance the scale so that we're not destroying the mother, which is the ultimate toxic masculinity, right? Destroying the mother. So I'm glad for the women who feel supported by men. That's fantastic. And I do know some men who would fall into that category. And I also know many men who have not been healed themselves because the toxic masculine culture has supported them in believing that their way is the only way or the right way, and that the power and might of the masculine has oppressed and separated women. And so this is an opportunity for women to come back to themselves, come back to one another, collaborate and connect and lift each other up, and then have a force, a connected, combined force that says to men, no, really, you're going to have to make room for us. Make room so that we can do this together, and we can clean up some of the messes that have happened, and we can restore humanity to the true human love, connectedness, and power of compassionate care for one another and for the planet. And I have great hope in that. And that's why I do what I do, because I can see what's wrong. As a truth talker, I can see what's wrong, and I don't mind saying what's wrong. But I'm not saying that we have to despair in it. We just have to gather the resources and wisdom that we have and give it its right place.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. Audrey, would you add anything to that? It's a pretty big question that Mauro is posing.
I don't know that I have anything to add to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that that was beautifully put.
Yeah, Kim Kerrigan is saying that her answer is that men must discover, honor the divine feminine within first, honor and protect women in all regards.
Very good.
I think that's, and while we're on that, to speak a little bit more, Mary Frances, about why you're limiting this trip just to women.
Well, having taught psychology in women for, I don't know, close to 30 years now, what I find is that even though men are allowed to take the course at my university, what happens invariably is that the women defer to the men, even if they're men who are younger than them. Oh, I want to hear about your experience. So there's this kind of deferential space made for the men to come forward, rather than saying, you're here among the women. It would be good for you to be quiet and listen and learn. And so I recognize that in many places, and there's plenty of research to back it up. When there is even a single man in the room with many women, women often speak less. They're less able to be true to themselves. They're more conscious of the power differential, and also of the experience of being dismissed for having feelings, or dismissed for having passionate experience of things. And among women, if you get in a women's group and you see how women can just be honest and real and deep with one another in ways that make a lot of men uncomfortable, because if they haven't done their own healing work, it's hard for them to tap into those things, and they totally want to fix things, or that lovely word mansplain what it is like to be a woman to women. And so sometimes I've had to say to my students, you think you know what it's like to be a woman, but you don't. So you might want to listen to the actual women and tell about their experience and how it is to be a woman, and not impose your idea. And of course, in psychology, much of psychology, even today, unfortunately, is focused on male models and male theories and male research. And so that's changing. It's changing. I think it's glacially slow sometimes, but I want to do my bit and say, we need to have a container where women can be free of that particular pressure, because it is a systemic pressure that's been internalized by many, many women. And when we're free of that, there's this kind of big sigh of relief, like we can just be midlife women without having to look a certain way, or speak a certain way, or love a certain way, or relate to nature and God in a certain way. It just takes all of those pressures away. And it's one of the things that, we'll be working on. And even the women who are interested and drawn to this particular pilgrimage, I'm gonna have a session with each of them beforehand and say, this is what we're doing. It's an intentional, conscious experience of being with women and being free to investigate that part of themselves that they might have had to set aside for other reasons, and many reasons in our culture. It's challenging being a wise woman in a culture that doesn't value wise women.
Yeah. Well, all next week, from Tuesday till Friday, we're having a very special summit that will be exploring the growing evidence of fundamental genetic differences between men and women. Because the point that you're making is the norm, that most scientific studies out there, whether in psychology or medicine or science, have been done on men, with the assumption being that men and women are basically the same. And the emerging evidence is, in fact, they are not. That I and another man have about a 99.999% similarity in our chromosomes and genes, but the difference between you and I is the same differences between humans and the upper primates. And you and Audrey have a 99.999% similarity. So what they're beginning to realize is what you've intuited probably your entire life, and most people, is that the difference affects growth patterns, not only psycho-emotionality, but the kinds of diseases we get, the kinds of cures to the diseases differ from men and women. It's not anybody takes the same pill. They're beginning to realize that they have to start developing even different medical procedures and regimes for the growing distinction between not only male and female psyches, but male and female bodies, so that taking women out on their own is actually an extremely important thing to do. And we'll be having a woman who's been a pioneer in this. I think it's at the University of Maryland, who's recognizing that in order to correct the misperceptions that have been implied by most of the studies being done on men, there's a whole new protocol for how you do research on women about women's issues that are distinct from men. So that's going to be all next week on Humanity Rising, everyone. And I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation, because it's not only completely new, but it's challenging almost everything we think we know based on studies we thought were universal.
Right. I'd like to add to that the spiritual component. Someone said that men have to bring up the feminine in themselves, and I think it's an interesting developmental experience that women are more kind of inward in the earlier years and more outward in the later years, like more feminine, more masculine, receptive versus active, and men are the opposite. And so I think that over time, as people age, we all have the experience of both of those, that dynamic play. And in my estimation and experience, we're meant to be individually coming into balance with those two, merging those two in our being, and then interrelatedly also doing that with the masculine, feminine, other people, whether those are partners or other people that we're working with or people in the world, that dance, that dynamic is really so important. And so recognizing that we have to respect the differences in order to do the dance well, but also that inside our own selves, Jung would call it individuation, right? Gathering all of those human qualities and marrying them to one another in a beautiful dance inside of us. And then we can do that with people outside of us. And that's true for men and women. And that's part of the beauty of this process of aging, is that you get to see these other qualities that maybe were pushed aside in years when, for me, in my mothering years, when I was much more on the feminine side, nurturing and raising children, and then coming into a more powerful stance as the physiology changes, the physiological parts of us. And that's all. That's a beautiful dance as well. And so I look forward to hearing what comes of that. And I'm sure it will be it will inform all of our systems going forward, that we need to address the differences. We're all human, and we have differences that are significant and important to recognize and take into account. So,
yeah. A quick question from Sheila Spramuli about the labyrinth. Is there going to be any labyrinth walking
I did see
your
that,
pilgrim?
and as I review the places in my mind that that we'll be going to. There's not an actual labyrinth, but I would say that many of the places we go to, for example, we'll be going down into the ground, into the Cave of Cats, which is the birthplace of Queen Maeve. So there's an inward journey physically doing that. There's an inward journey climbing the mountain of Knocknarea where Queen Maeve was buried. There's an inward journey of going to the Hill of Tara because there are pathways that go up to the Hill of Tara and go up to the Stone of Destiny. So the movement that brings us in is incorporated in the land and the actual land and the experiences that we'll be doing. There's a holy well where there's a circle to walk with the Stations of the Cross circle. So there's a lot of movement,
Beautiful.
spiral movement individually, and just because of the places on the planet that we'll be visiting, that will incorporate a labyrinthine experience, even if we're not walking a particular labyrinth.
Now, Kurt Kruger has a technical question, and I'm not sure I can pronounce it, Mary Frances, but how about Clone Machnois near Athlone, the remains of the last vestige of Christian scriptures and learning before the Vikings came in? Do you know anything about that?
I'm not familiar with that particular place. I'm even though I'm going to some places that might be considered Christian or Catholic because of Mother Mary, I'm not really planning to spend a lot of time in the Christian historical aspect because, as we all know, there's a lot of good that came out of Christianity and a lot of not so good that came out of Christianity. And I'm saying this as a Christian mystic, so that's challenging for a lot of people, and even the people in Ireland. Very historically from Celtic, they went into Catholicism very devoutly, and there's a lot of pushback with that in their own culture. So I don't know that place. I will look it up though. Thank you, Kurt, for that.
And then another question from Ina Albert about your necklace. She
Oh,
wants you to comment on your necklace.
sure. So, yeah, this is called the
Beautiful.
Messianic Seal, and it is the Judaic menorah and the Christian fish, and they overlap in this Star of David form, which is also called Merkaba. And so that is the marriage of spirit and matter. So as mystics, we're bringing spirit into matter, the father and the mother together in the heart. And so this is my bishop seal, my bishop symbol, and that's what that stands for.
Well, Mary Frances, I want to thank you very much, and I recommend to all of you this pilgrimage. Those of you women who are in your midlife, in particular, this is a pilgrimage that's specifically designed for you in a small, intimate group. And I put it also another pilgrimage because the week after Mary Frances gets back, there's a course that we're convening up in Maine at the farm of Kaylin Rain, who's a master of the invisible realms. And Mary Frances will be co-teaching with me and Kaylin's wife, Jenny, around issues pertaining to wisdom and civilization. We'll be walking the labyrinth. Kaylin has over 700 sacred objects, many purbas and all kinds of power objects that we'll be delving into. Mary Frances also mentioned Colette, who's deeply immersed in the Druidic tradition. So pilgrimages are important. We urge you to avail yourself of one of them, but in particular, we wanted to emphasize what Mary Frances and Audrey were going to be convening in mid-September to you all. And I'm wondering, Audrey, could you close us out today with just some music?
I would love to.
And then we can all, those of you who can meet Mary Frances in the after chat.
Peace within you, peace around you, peace above and below you, peace within you, Peace surrounding you, peace above and below you, peace.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Mary Frances. Making pilgrimage is what gives us a connection with the holy, with the sacred. And there are few people I know that can do this more masterfully than Mary Frances Drake. So, Mary Frances, we support what you're doing. I look forward to seeing you at Kalen's farm after you complete your journey, possibly you too, Audrey, at some point in the future. And that'll do it for us for today, everyone. And enjoy your weekend. We'll see you on Monday. And again, as I say, next week, starting on Tuesday, we'll be delving into this really deep, new emerging awareness of the really distinct differences between men and women that can inform everything from who we are physically, psycho-emotionally, and equally fundamentally spiritually. You're all welcome to the after session chat. You'll see the link in the chat box, and we'll see you again here on Monday on Humanity Rising. Bye for now. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Jim.